Welcome in to the Bleacher Report Draft Show. It's an honor to be here covering the 2025 MLB Draft. My name is Chris Clegg, and alongside with me is my good buddy Eric Cross. Eric, how you doing tonight?
I am doing great, Chris. We've been waiting for this moment. Another draft is here. Feels like we were just doing last year's draft, but now we get a new crop of players to break down and see where they're going to be spending at least the beginning part of their careers.
Yeah, it's an exciting night for sure. And I know the MLB draft is not as popularized as the NFL draft, but for me, for you, for many others, this is like kind of Christmas morning as we get like you said, a new crop of prospects in, and it's going to be an exciting draft. I can't remember the last time we haven't had like consensus. And I know we have a good idea of who may go at the top, but there's not a standout player that like no one kind of took over and like dominated all year, like we saw with Charlie Condon last season, or even like the dominance that we saw from a Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz the previous year. So it'll be an interesting draft. We're here to break down the first 20 picks. And here's what I can tell you. It's going to get pretty wild. It's going to be a fun night. I think things could get off the rails pretty quickly as soon as pick 3 I've been hearing, maybe even pick 2. The Angels have been rumored to do some pretty wild stuff. So it's going to be a fun night for sure. So I'm looking forward to it. We're getting ready to get underway here. Eric, any thoughts as we get prepared for the first pick?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, especially once we get past the first few picks, kind of which way these teams go. Like you said, there's not like that standout guy that's head and shoulders above the rest. Some of those guys that were considered to be the top guys entering the season, kind of fell off a little bit in certain areas. So yeah, there's no stud, but there's a lot of talent in this draft, though, especially on the pitching side. A lot of collegiate arms. Obviously there's always a great crop of, prep shortstops as there is every year. We get that same, big bunch of guys this year as well. So a lot of interesting fits here, seeing where these guys are going to fall, but it's going to be really exciting.
Absolutely. So getting ready to get underway. We've got some questions. Who do the Giants go with at 13? It's going to be pretty fascinating. Yeah, I'm hearing some college bats there. I know they like Ike Irish a lot. If Irish gets there, so that will be an interesting one to watch. I do think they are looking at some of those guys in that range. I know they've liked Veva Aloy a lot. So that would be an interesting one to keep an eye on. That would be probably the high end for Aloy out of Arkansas, but I know that that's a player they've been really keen on getting that shortstop in their system. Obviously, I have Adames for a while, but it'll be kind of interesting to see. Steven says, I want the Nationals to do something wacky. Yeah, it'd be fun. I would love to see them go Willits. I'm not sure they do. I think it's Anderson. We'll see here in just a moment. But yeah, it would be funny to see them do something off the rails. And, they've got some other picks later on where they could kind of use that money. So, it will be fun to follow and see. So, yeah, we're in right there. The Nationals obviously have the first pick in this draft. As we wait for this pick to come in, any thoughts on the system, Eric, and any storylines? Obviously, there's been a lot of storylines around the Nationals, but, I'm curious what your thoughts are, especially given the firings they have made recently.
Yeah, kind of an interesting last few weeks here for the Nationals, but this system I think has been improved over the last couple of years, and you've seen some of those guys already up in the major leagues. Obviously, James Wood has ascended to being one of the most exciting young players in all of baseball. Mackenzie Gore, both those guys obviously they got from San Diego. Has become an electric young left-handed arm. Brady House, most recent guy that got the call up. He just hit his first career home run the other day. And then they have a lot of good pitching prospects in this system too, headlined by Travis Sakura, who I think is in that discussion for a top pitching prospect still in the minors now that we have Chase Burns and Jacob Misiorowski up in the major leagues with Cincinnati and Milwaukee. So, Harleen Susanna, obviously has another high upside arm there as well. So Kate Cavalli working his way back. A lot of fun, players in this system, and see if they add another arm here with Kate Anderson.
Yeah, that would be an interesting fit. It kind of fits their
Yeah.
contention window, I'd say, to take a Cade Anderson there. Obviously, Sakura right now down with a tricep injury. Just talked to Travis last week, and he doesn't expect to be out long, obviously out the futures game, but he's expected to get back to action over the next couple of weeks. He says it's not serious. The Nationals saying it's not serious either. So, he's one that obviously pushed from, as he returned, coming back from injury. He had the hip injury and surgery, so he came back from single A, high A, then double A. His stuff's better than ever right now. I scouted him in early June, and he's up to 99. He's sitting 96. Splitter looks really good. Slider is there as well. Susana working his way back from an injury as well. Obviously, that UCL injury a little concerning, and we hope for the best there. Get Brady House in the majors. You mentioned Alex Clemmie, another one that I got to see a couple weeks ago when Sakura pitched that week. So, yeah, they've got the talent in the system. I think they've done a better job with development than people have given them credit for. And so now they get to add a 1-1 pick in there and insert some more juice into the system. So that will be a lot of fun to see. Obviously, like the firings of Mike Rizzo, Dave Martinez bring up some interesting points related to the draft too, because, you know, there's some ties with Rizzo and some of the agents, especially Ethan Holliday's agent. Some people have said now that it seems that Holliday won't be the pick, just given the firing of Rizzo. There was they were very close with Scott Boras, who is Holliday's agent. So it seems at the moment, like my gut says Cade Anderson. It's hard to nail it down because they could also go that route and look for a prep player. So it wouldn't shock me at all if Holliday was picked there. I think we'll get really interesting at 2, though, with the Angels. So that should be a lot of fun because while the Angels have been kind of Liam Doyle through and through, I've been hearing some rumblings over the last couple of days they may be going the prep route. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
Being made. It should be here any minute. So we don't have an exact time on it, but they should be making the pick here shortly.
Yeah, the Angels are definitely. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, God, so if you have any thoughts, feel free to fire away.
Yeah, no, the Angels are definitely interesting. Obviously, they've been going, kind of heavier on the collegiate route, over the last handful of years, getting those guys to, to the majors pretty quickly. And obviously, Neto debuted quickly, Shanwell debuted quickly. Ryan Johnson completely skipped the minor leagues, though he's back down in Double A at this point after coming up as a reliever. But yeah, Doyle definitely fits the Angels. So like that would, in my mind, that makes the most sense for the Angels to go Doyle there. Collegiate arm that should move quickly, through the system, maybe even debut early next year. But yeah, who knows with the Angels? As we've seen over the last decade plus, the Angels are far from predictable at times. So yeah, definitely it'll be fun to see what they do it too.
Yeah, Nate mentioned sounds like the Reds are really in on Ike Irish. I've heard that too. I also have seen Billy Carlson connected there. If he falls that far, obviously that's not a lock for him to get to that spot. So Carlson could go earlier. I've heard Carlson as early as Pittsburgh at 6. So that could be an interesting route if they went that way. But yeah, it seems that the Reds are kind of in tune on Irish. The Reds also may be looking at another arm. They have a very long track record of drafting college arms, and there's some good ones that are there in that range. So, it would certainly be interesting to see there. Jordan asked Eric if JoJo Parker goes to Colorado, would he be the auto 1-1 for fantasy?
I think, well, I don't think there's any auto 1-1 for fantasy this year. I like Georgia Parker a lot. I actually have him 1-1 right now. But obviously Eli Willits is in there. And I can make a case for Ethan Holliday in there, depending on where you are on the hit tool. Obviously the upside with the power is immense with him. But yeah, Parker in Colorado would be really fun. I think it's a well-rounded offensive skill set. Good contact, good approach. Solid power projection as well. And so that would be a really fun landing spot. And yeah, that would more so cement his 1-1 for me, but I don't think it's a no-brainer by any means, just given how close a lot of these guys are at the top this year.
Well, the Nationals pick is in, and they certainly do shock the world. I heard this was a possibility to go Eli Willits, and that's who they take, is Eli Willits at 1-1. It's surprising, but it's not shocking. Willits is a phenomenal player, and he's the youngest player in the draft class. So let's give it some grades, and we'll discuss Willits because I actually have Willits as my top player in the draft. So that checks out. But for me, it's an A. Again, you get my highest ranked player, and they take him 1. So I like that pick. So it's an A from me. Eric, what you got?
Yeah, I was thinking A or A minus there. I think I would have, if it was me making the decision, I would have went with an arm for them. I would just like to get Kate Anderson in there to go with all those names we already talked about. But you can't go wrong with an Eli Willits, who I have as my number two guy in this draft class. A very exciting prep shortstop, and definitely one of the best, arguably the best prep shortstop in this class.
Yeah, so this obviously shakes the board a lot because now you have Cade Anderson available. Do the Angels just take Cade Anderson here next? We shall see. But for me, Willits, safe, one of the safest prep prospects I think we've seen in a while. Switch hitter, the hit tool is off the charts here with Willits. His showcase numbers were elite. So last year against the best competition, his age, and I say his age, he's actually reclassified. He was part of the 2026 draft. He is 17 and a half years old, won't turn 18 until December. He is a very safe hit tool. We made it run 90% contact rates on the showcase last summer. He showed really good feel with power too. You look and he's kind of developed that power. He gets the pull side on fastballs. Willits checks a lot of boxes for me that I like to see in a hitter. He's smooth in the field. While some have kind of said he may move to second, I could see him sticking it short depending on how that development goes. It's a really good athlete. He's a plus runner, good aggression on the base paths. Willits just checks kind of all the boxes. There's not really any red flags there for me for Eli Willits, which is the reason that I did end up slotting him at 1 overall in my draft rankings. So,
Yep.
I'm happy to see that the Nationals go that way. I'll be really curious the bonus here. Like, will it be the biggest bonus in history? We shall see. And what do the Nationals do then with this money if they do underslot and how this affects them? So, yeah, I'll be really watching this kind of closely now as we move forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Willis, like you mentioned, like, the all-around skill set just on both sides of the ball is really good. Like, not a flashy guy, doesn't have, the huge power, huge speed, but just does everything well across the board, both offensively, defensively, speed. There's obviously some good power projection there as well. Hits well from both sides of the plate. He's another one that I strongly considered, along with JoJo Parker, as my number one in this class, and had him as my number one before switching to Parker most recently. But yeah, Willits definitely. He was Oklahoma commit, Oklahoma kid. Fort Cobb Broxton High School in Oklahoma. Just a really good guy that's going to be, potentially an all-star caliber shortstop. And maybe if he does move over to second base, that'd be a pretty fun middle infield with him and CJ Abrams long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't think he's going to be pushed aggressively, 17 years old. So
Right.
I've heard his camp was pushing for him to go straight to single A despite the age. They did not want him to go to complex ball. That was kind of a demand from some teams when they had talked to them. So I'm kind of curious if we see him go straight to single A. The Fred Nats, that would be a lot of fun. How does a 17-and-a-half-year-old handle, full season ball out of the gate? If that happens, we'll see. I think, the hit tool will hold up, though. But very excited about the Willits pick. And so we've got some questions. Guys, who likes, I don't think that was for us about the Guardians, but some questions about Miami. Hope a good player falls to Miami. Yeah, Miami's in a great spot. You look at where they're on the board at 7, but I think that's kind of a prime spot to be because, with there not being a lot of consensus at the top, it's kind of a big conglomerate of players. And I think Miami's in a very good spot here to get a really solid player. So, I think that it would be a really good spot for them to take a JoJo Parker. I think now that makes sense. I think we've seen some Ethan Holliday kind of locked into Colorado. That's kind of it. That's everything I've heard, that if he doesn't go 1-1, he's going to Colorado. So that seems kind of a safe bet at this point. We've got the pick in with the Angels. Eric, does your pick, from 10 minutes ago change now that we've seen Willits go 1? Who do you have the Angels taking here?
Yeah, I think they're going to switch to Katie Anderson. I think Anderson's there's not like a huge separation between Anderson and Liam Doyle, but I do think Anderson is, slightly more polished and a slightly better all around arm for this draft class. So I do think they kind of shift gears. I mean, well, maybe they're just dead set on Doyle, and maybe this doesn't matter. Sometimes teams are have their guy, and even when the draft board gets shaken up a little bit, they stick with their guy. So it wouldn't surprise me if they stick with Liam Doyle here at 2. But it would shock me if it's not one of Doyle or Anderson. That would really surprise me.
Well, the pick is in, and again, we're as wild as can be. Tyler Bremner going.
Oh wow.
UC Santa Barbara right-handed arm. Tyler Bremner entered the season as the probably consensus like top arm with Jamie Arnold. So him and Jamie Arnold were discussed as kind of the top arms entering the season. And so Bremner started out kind of slow, but he really picked it up down the stretch. We'll talk a little bit about that after we give grades here. For me, I'll give it a B minus. I think that, Bremner is down my board closer to 20. So I understand what they're trying to do here. They're definitely going to go under slot to the max here. And Bremner's a good arm, but there's just so many more available. So, Eric, what's your grade?
I'll give it a B. I think I'm a little higher than most on a Tyler Bremner. I think it's a really good, you know, pitch mix here. Slider is good. Changeup is, one of the better changeups in this draft. Velocity's there as well. Good command, good control. So yeah, I would have gone other arms, which I would have given Key Anderson an A here, or even Liam Doyle. But I do like Bremner a good bit here. I think he's going to be a pretty good, top half of the rotation type arm long term. So yeah, I mean, little surprising, but still a good arm there in Tyler Bremner.
Yeah, the Angels obviously have a long history of moving guys very aggressively. It wouldn't be shocking if we see Tyler Bremner like up very soon. Obviously, he threw innings this year, so maybe they don't push him this year. But again, Ryan Johnson last year skipped the minors. I know he didn't pitch immediately after being drafted. But Bremner, I think you have to look at the results down the stretch with him. It's the fastball improved. He added about 2 inches of IVB, kind of changed a couple things in the grip. He set 95. He was 18 to 20 inches of vert on the fastball, 15 inches of arm side. So it's fairly short extension, so it doesn't play up. But still, mid 90s, good around the fastball. You mentioned, I think the changeup's probably the best changeup in the draft. You could argue that at least. I think Seth Hernandez has that argument to have the better changeup. So again, here's the Angels getting this guy, changeup first arm, fastball. It's hit or miss at times, but the changeup's 20 inches of arm side fade, which is high end. The slider's a decent third offering. I think that's something that will have to improve. I think you look at the fastball changeup combo, and I think the teams that at least were looking at Bremner were hoping they could develop a cutter slider type. And so the Angels are interesting because they tend to just not worry too much about development, just shove them with what they've got. So we'll see how this shakes out with Tyler Bremner here in Los Angeles. But this is certainly a big underslot deal, and will be interesting how that could go. So, yeah. It's a very fascinating pick. But here we have a interesting spot for the Mariners. So I'm really fascinated where they go now. There was a lot of steam with Seth Hernandez going there, but now you have Kate Anderson on the board. I think it's one of those two, most likely. Eric, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Kate Anderson. I've started, now that he's fallen. I don't think they expected him to fall to three. I think I think he felt like pretty much a shoe-in to go, number one or number two in this draft. So now that he's at three now, in Seattle, obviously, in the postseason hunt this year, looking to get, some more near ready talent and help that window, which is like now or soon. So I think I could see them shifting from the long-term arm to the short-term arm here to go Kate Anderson.
Yeah, there was a question about Holliday and if his stock dropped. I think his stock is actually up from where it was this time last summer, but it's kind of been one of those things where they've been willing this thing, the Holliday to Colorado thing for a while. That's been really pushed heavily. So just given the connections with Matt, playing there, obviously, that was somewhere where Ethan wanted to go. The family wanted him to go. So this has been pushed pretty heavily by a lot of different avenues. So I wouldn't say his stock's necessarily dropped. He had a really good spring. The dual questions are still there for me, but I do think that if Holliday didn't go 1-4 seemed like the logical thing. So yeah, we're in an interesting spot here for the Seattle Mariners. I mean, they can go several different ways. Somebody said we were being nice with a B grade. Yeah, I was just being honest. It's being nice. I don't love the picks, so it's not where I would have gone, because who then do the Angels take down the board? Like, you have to already have someone in mind that you have, pretty much had a handshake deal. So we got the Mariners selection coming in here. So let's see where they go, and we will discuss. All right, the pick is in. And they go the route that I would have gone. It's Cade Anderson. I mean, just given the fact that he's on the board here, this makes all the sense in the world for them. Cade Anderson, in my opinion, was the best collegiate arm in the draft. You've got him and Seth Hernandez. So for me, this gets a solid A. I was taking Cade Anderson at the top. The fact that two teams passed on him, he falls to Seattle, which is a great pitch development organization. I love this. Love this for them. So it's a solid A for me.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can go with anything but an A here. Getting a guy that everyone or most people thought was going to go 1-1, probably the most best combination of ceiling, floor, proximity, guy that can move quickly, but more than just a high floor guy. This guy could be a top two guy in a rotation, and a guy that is going to like you mentioned, a good organization there with Seattle that already has a lot of good pitching up at the major league level right now, and just adding in Cade Anderson in a year or two to that mix for Seattle is going to be really good, and it really help with that window where they could be a really scary team for the next half decade or more. So yeah, I like this fit a lot here.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I think you can push him aggressively. The Mariners desperately need to get back into contention for this fan base, and he's such a high floor arm that I think you can push him pretty aggressively. So you've got now a high floor lefty that still has a high ceiling. Like you said, I think it's the best combo of those two. You look at what he did. He was a draft eligible sophomore, and he threw just 38 innings last year, took a massive leap through 119. You saw the College World Series final start. I mean, it was absolutely dominant. I know he walked four batters, whatever. I mean, he was dominant all season, 180 strikeouts, a 3.18 ERA across 119 innings. The interesting thing about Cade Anderson to me is that he doesn't have like one pitch that stands out. Like you look at a Liam Doyle, it's like, yes, he's got the best fastball in the draft. You look at a Seth Hernandez, yes, it may be the best changeup, or you could throw Bremner in that boat too. Anderson's combination of having a deep arsenal of pitches that are all above average really stands out to me. And so when you get that combination where you say, okay, sure, the fastball is 93, but you look at the frame and I say, this could tick up. It's got elite traits. I mean, he's 19 inches of vert from a 6-foot release height. The release characteristics are pretty generic on the fastball, but it's decent arm side run. It sometimes appears as a cut ride. So you look at this and I think the fastball is good. It's two breaking balls. It's a mid-80s slider with good depth, 6 to 8 inches of sweep. It's a curveball in the upper 70s with two-plane break. It's like 15 inches, negative 15 inches of IVB, 10 inches of sweep. So you like to see that. And then his changeup. I think the changeup might have been the best offering. 50% whiff rate in college on that changeup alone. So we talk about some other people's changeup. Pretty good changeup there. 12 to 15 inches of fade. Really, really good. Arsenal, good command. All the boxes are checked, and now he's in a great org for pitching. So, Eric, any thoughts on Anderson?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. Like he's not the flashiest guy by any means. Like you mentioned, the velocity isn't premium. Like he's not up there throwing mid to upper 90s consistently, though he can touch the mid 90s. But just a really good four pitch mix of potentially all above average offerings. Has a good feel for spin. You mentioned the changeup. He's really got a good feel for that as well, and just commands everything well. He limits damage done against him. Not a guy that's gonna walk a ton of guys in general and gonna put him in bad situations where he's got two guys on because he just couldn't find the zone. This guy fills the zone. This guy can miss bats as well. And again, he used to be a guy that fits really well there in Seattle, and probably a guy we see at some point in 2026 as well. He'd probably be one of the first, maybe the first guy, well, depending on the Angels with Bremner, but one of the first to kind of get to the major leagues from this draft class and really help that window with Seattle. So yeah, it's a really good pick here.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a comment regarding the Mariners and their ability to draft pitchers. I'd argue that the Mariners are one of the best amateur scouting teams in the game. You look at their drafts year after year, and they're stellar. So, I think they've done their due diligence. They got a guy that they didn't expect to be there. So now it's going to be really fun because I think the pick is Holliday here. But you talk about the wildest start to a draft we've seen. If the Rockies don't go Ethan Holliday, this might be the wildest off the rails first four picks that we've seen in some time. So, couple others, it says, how do you guys see the first two odd picks changing the rest of the top. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of on point what we we're just talking about. But if Holliday doesn't go here, it's going to get really wacky. But so for me, I mean, you've got Willits off the board. You've got Anderson off the board. Those are my top two. We've got the Rockies pick coming in. But Seth Hernandez could be an interesting spot here. We'll see who the Rockies take right here. And we will discuss the pick is in. So let's see who they take. And this might have been the, most shoe-in pick I think that we've had. And this has been the word for a year plus, that it would be Ethan Holliday. The bloodlines are there. Yeah. This is something that's been pushed for a while. So Ethan Holliday is the pick. It's a dream landing spot for a bat. If there's one critique of Ethan Holliday, it's his hit tool. And hit tools can play up in cores because cores doesn't necessarily boost power, which Ethan doesn't need boosted. It boosts BABIP, which is batting average on balls in play. So the gaps are really big in the outfield. So you look at those things, and I think Holliday now sees a boost. Like, I look at this, and I think it's a great spot, obviously. So, I still have my questions about Holliday's hit tool, just given what we've seen on the showcase. I'll give it a solid A, though, because I think that for a lot of people, Holliday was the top player in the draft, and they get him at 4. So I'm going to give it an A. Eric, what do you give it?
Yeah, I'm teetering A minus and A. I'll go A minus, but I do like the fit a lot, and it definitely makes sense. Obviously, with his father having such a good career there, and really being a fan favorite there when he was playing in Colorado, and obviously his son Jackson's in Baltimore, and now Ethan joining him in professional baseball and in the major leagues in a few years now. But yeah, this is a really good pick. Whether Holliday winds up over at third base, or sticks at shortstop, we shall see. But the power at Colorado, insanely exciting there. Like, could be a potential 30-plus homer bat year in, year out. And yeah, you mentioned, the hit tool is the concern. And as one of those bigger bodied shortstops that doesn't, not going to provide a ton of speed element, that bat's going to have to be there. But Coors Field has a great way of masking some inefficiencies within a player's hit tool. So even if he's sniffing an average hit tool here long term, I think that'll be enough for him to hit for a respectable average to go along with all that power and potentially slot in the middle of Colorado's lineup down the road. So yeah, really fun pick here, and one with some good story behind it with his family there too.
Yeah, I mean, the Rockies are not a good development organization, if we're honest, and so that's a wrench that's thrown into. So is this fair? How aggressive they get with him. He's a third baseman long term. He's not going to play shortstop. We're looking at him at third base, just given the body, given athleticism. Holliday's a third baseman, but he's going to hit for power. That's for sure. I think that it's some of the best power in the draft, especially from a prep player. So yeah, this is a pick that we expected. If you were betting on who would go where, like, I feel like this was like the safest betting odds for Holliday to go 4. And now we get really wacky. We've got the first 4 picks in. It's been Eli Willits 1 to the Washington Nationals, Tyler Bremner 2, which was probably the biggest shock to the Angels, Cade Anderson 3 to the Seattle Mariners, and then Ethan Holliday 4 to the Colorado Rockies. We have now the St. Louis Cardinals on the clock. This is going to be an interesting pick because this could go a lot of ways. I do want to answer a question, though. I said, how did the White Sox end up at 10 after the 2024 season they had? There were several questions about that. So in the new CBA, as of recent, the revenue share, so teams that get paid out. So if you're in the bottom 15 and you get paid out, you can only pick in the top 10 for 3 seasons. And then if you are not, so like basically they kind of screwed themselves by ultimately tanking and having the worst season in history last year. They were not eligible to pick in the top 10. So, it's a really fascinating situation. The Angels will be there next season. The Angels pick will not be in the top 10, no matter where they finish. So they're pretty much guaranteed, like, they cannot pick in the top 10 next year. So it's just based on the CBA, it's based on rev sharing. So yeah, So messed up. You could argue that for sure. So, Ethan, what does Ethan Holliday specialize in? It's certainly a power bat, one of the better power bats in the class. Big exit velocities, big frame, much bigger than his brother Jackson. And I think that he's going to get us some good power. Great spot in course as well. So, the Cardinals are on the clock. Eric, you have any thoughts on where they go? Because I think it could go several different ways here.
I've kind of been here, feeling arm for them. So I wonder if they go with maybe a Liam Doyle here, and now that he's still on the board. But yeah, you mentioned I haven't gotten a great feel in St. Louis. That they don't have any area where they like really need a guy, but definitely could go multiple different ways here. But I have been feeling armed, so it'll be interesting to see if they take Doyle now that he's fallen to them at number 5.
Yeah, I mean, Seth Hernandez is my top player on the board. So obviously
Same,
that
yeah.
would be fantastic. I think it makes sense for the Cardinals to go a pitcher. We'll see. Rob Manfred is out. Their selection is coming in. So we'll see who they take. And the pick is in. And again, it's Liam Doyle, Tennessee Volunteers. This is an interesting pick who I thought was going to be kind of shooed in to go number 2. And Liam Doyle, best fastball in the draft. Not a question for me about that. Best fastball in the draft. He's actually got a pretty good splitter as well. I think the splitter's pretty underrated to go along with the slider. He took a massive leap forward as far as command goes this year. We'll see if it sticks, but Liam Doyle is the pick here. St. Louis loves their pitchers. I was wondering if they go Jamie Arnold, who fits the mold of like a Cooper Jerpy they took in the first round several years ago. But Doyle makes sense that they can push him aggressively. The Cardinals desperately need to get back to contention for that fan base. I think this pick makes sense. So I'll give it a B+ because I'm still a little skeptical of Doyle and the command at times. But you can't argue that Doyle made the strides and was dominant all season. But a B+, I think he fell. And so I'm going B+. Eric, what you got?
Yeah, in general on talent, I think I'd go B+. But given that he did fall, and I think this is just a really good value for St. Louis, I'll bump him up to an A- here. Like you said, the fastball is just absolutely elite in terms of velocity, movement profile. It can hit 100 with great movement on it. And the rest, doesn't have like a dominant secondary, but a good, plethora of secondaries as well. And maybe he's a guy that, has a little bit of a higher whip down the road, but should be a big strikeout arm and a guy that, St. Louis can push quickly and maybe get up to, the major leagues next year. So I think this is a great move for them. And then I think this is a good A-.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look at the Cardinals right now, they're 2.5 games out of a wild card slot. Is it egregious for them to do something that we haven't seen them do? I mean, he could be pushed in a bullpen role. And I think Liam Doyle has the stuff to pitch out of an MLB bullpen at this moment.
Yep.
I think that it's highly possible. So if the Cardinals find themselves in September in this mix, does Liam Doyle pitch out of the bullpen? And I think that it could absolutely work. We haven't seen this be a trend with the Cardinals, but again, we're looking at definitely some reliever risk. I have some concerns, but you look at the upside. The upside could be like Garrett Crochet. I mean, this is the kind of arm that Crochet was. So if all clicks, we see the upside, and it's certainly there. And you look at the pitch data, you look at the arsenal. Doyle's fastball heavy, and I think that could change. 65% fastball usage this year, 96 on average, touches triple digits. It's 19 inches of IVB, which is plus or better from a 5'9" release height. So that obviously stands out. He gets good arm side run. It's 40% whiff rate. That's excellent for a fastball. So again, I think the fastball is a 70 grade on the 2080 scale. So about as good as they come in the draft. You look at the splitter, set 86. It's late depth. It's 10 inches of arm side fade. Pairs really well with the fastball. 40% whiff rate again. So 2 pitches there with that 40% whiff rate. You'll love to see that. He experimented with a cutter shape at around 87, inconsistent at times. His sweeper slider was down lower 80s with around 10 inches of sweep. Good depth to that. So again, high effort delivery, heavy fastball usage. Those are my biggest concerns. I think you're right, though. Like, given that the Angels were likely to take him, he falls to 5. Like, this is a good spot for the, how far would he have fallen? So for me, like I said, if all clicks for Doyle, I'll put this in my draft report. If all clicks, it's a Garrett Crochet type arsenal. And that's crazy to say because Crochet has evolved into one of the better arms in Major League Baseball. But this is the kind of characteristics we saw out of Crochet in college. So you got to love the upside here. And I know Cardinals fans have to be happy. They were in a great spot where there were so many good options. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic to see where the draft goes now. I have an inclination that the Pirates might have got a gift at 6. I mean, Seth Hernandez, like, how far could he fall? And if not, like, you're in a golden spot because I've Arquette still on the board. And I know that obviously they've got Connor Griffin in the system, but I've Arquette, you look at the high floor, the upside, this would be an interesting spot. So, let's see if we've got any questions in the chat that we can answer. Just wanted Doyle to the Jays. Yeah, Doyle fell. Arnold to the Pirates. It could be. The Pirates love their pitchers, so they've got so many. They need to draft a bat, but we'll see. The pick is coming in right now. All right. The selection is in for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they go with my top remaining player. It's Seth Hernandez, who I have 3rd overall in the draft. You could have argued that Seth Hernandez is the best pitcher in the class, and I wouldn't have argued against it. I have him and Cade back to back. So this was a great spot. I mean, ultimately, we've seen the Pirates' success with their pitch development, and you got to love getting a Seth Hernandez here, who might be the best prep righty that we've seen in quite some time. So for me, this gets a solid A for Seth Hernandez here, just given the ability that he brings to the table, the upside that he offers, and the Pirates' ability to develop pitchers. So it's a solid A for me. What you got, Eric?
I'm going A+. I absolutely love this landing spot. Pittsburgh has done a lot better in terms of, player development over the last, half, decade or so. And just the potential down the road to, it's just crazy to think about this potential foursome in the rotation. Obviously, Paul Skeens are going to be the best pitcher in baseball leading it. Jared Jones, when he's back from injury, you got Bubba Chandler and then Seth Hernandez with all the other, decent arms they have. But obviously those are the big four. That potentially being their 1 through 4, like 3-4 years down the road. I mean, it's so far away, but just the thought of that is really exciting. And then obviously they have to figure things out on the hitting side, and that's a whole different story altogether. But yeah, I think this was an A+ for Pittsburgh. It's getting a guy that I have as the best arm in the class, just elite stuff. And I don't like to throw on the term future ace too often, but if you're gonna throw around future ace for anybody in this draft class, I think it's you do it with Hernandez here. So love this pick for Pittsburgh. I think it's great.
Yeah, my only argument against it is outside of Connor Griffin, your farm system severely lacks bats. And we've seen that be an issue. I mean, ultimately, they have struggled with the development of their bats, and they haven't drafted a lot of bats either. So you look at that, and that's an issue. When you get it, you could get a guy like Arquette. It just, I don't have an argument against taking Seth Hernandez. Again, my best available player here. Connor Griffin might be the best prospect in baseball after we see Anthony graduate. And what are they doing? Like, what direction they want to go? When are they trying to compete? So it'll be interesting. But Seth Hernandez, certainly good stuff. I want to say, Cubs fan, we'll get to your question. We see who will the Cubs draft. We'll get to that in just a moment. I want to kind of walk through Seth Hernandez Arsenal because it's a good one. Obviously, prototypical frame, 6'4", 195. If you build a pitcher in a lab, like that's what you want to look like out of high school. Yep. The fastball, it's a lower release height at 5'9". He's mid-90s. And ultimately, it's pretty good ride. So he's like 16, 18 inches of IVB, can touch triple digits. Changeup, though, beautiful pitch. 15 inches of fade routinely. It's late dive, kind of falls off the map. From a breaking ball perspective, Hernandez works a slider, low to mid 80s at times, more of a gyro shape. But his curveball is a 2-plane breaker in the upper 70s. negative 8 to 12 inches of IVB. So pretty good movement numbers there and good sweeping action as well. So the arsenal's there. The control and command are there for Seth Hernandez. Again, my best available player. So yeah, it's an interesting spot. Tamar Johnson, Antonio mentioned in the chat, he's not doing so bad in AA. Yeah, he's picked it up. He's taken a step forward this year. You wanted to see those contact improvements, and he's made those strides. So Tamar has certainly looked good, but we do need to see more bats in the system. They severely lack that, but hard to argue against injecting Seth Hernandez here. Eric, who do you think the Cubs take? We did get a question. The Cubs, they picked down in 17. Who are you thinking they draft there?
I mean, God, they can go a number of different ways here. I mean, obviously, with how good their offense has been and their pitching kind of being, not terrible, but kind of lacking a little bit. Maybe they go out and address that at the deadline, but I kind of feel like they go with, whatever is their best pitcher still on the board there. I think Gage Wood, if he's still there, would be a phenomenal pick. He's kind of the one that I think could fall to that range. Maybe it's a Cruz Schoolcraft or someone like that as well. But the one I've kind of been honing in on for them, if he's there, is Gage Wood. I think that would fit their contention window, a guy that could get up fairly quickly in the next year or two and really help that rotation as they potentially contend for the next several years here in that NL Central. So I'll go with Gage Wood. We'll see how it goes, though.
Yeah, I mean, Wood, somebody I've heard them connected to. I know they like Faheva Aloy a lot, so I know that was just mentioned in the chat. Like, where does Aloy go? That's a spot where I wouldn't be shocked if he went. Another was they said Holliday's doing great. I don't think Holliday's doing great. I think he has taken some steps forward, though, from where he was last year. Somebody I scouted a lot in Greensboro, so I do like where he's gone. The Marlins are selecting. They've got a wide variety of players here where they could go. And the selection is in for the Miami Marlins. And they draft Iva Arquette, who was arguably the top college hitter on the board. So this makes complete sense, in my opinion. You love him falling here. And I won't necessarily say he fell here, but in my books, like, with what I had heard, I think that they kind of got it fall into their lap. There was speculation that the Marlins wanted Eli Willits here. There was speculation of JoJo Parker. But I think given Arquette, I ultimately think that this is a great pick. Arquette, he certainly has the hit tool. There's some concerns about contact against breaking balls, but the power is elite. It's a shortstop at 6'4". Like, those are hard to find. He feels like a lock to stick it short right now. So given the traits of Iva Arquette and what he brings to the table, I give it A- because I think Miami was in like a win-win spot here. So, Arquette's somebody that, again, the Marlins are doing interesting things, but I think they are on the right path with where they're looking to kind of go. And Arquette kind of fits the mold where he can move quickly. So A- for me. Eric, what's your grade here for Arquette to the Marlins at 7?
Yeah, I'm also going to go A-. They've gone a little bit more on, the high school route the last handful of years, especially early in the draft. And I think they definitely needed a good collegiate bat here this year. So like you mentioned, Arquette was, potentially the best one on the board, huge power, a guy that could really fit in the middle of that lineup. And that's the thing they're kind of lacking too. They don't really have a lot of those big boppers in the system. Yeah, they got De Los Santos, but outside of him, it's a lot of guys that are more like, the speedy hit tool types as opposed to the big kind of middle of the order power bats. So getting a guy like Arquette, I think is going to be, and then just getting a collegiate bat into that system as well to go around, all the young international guys they have, and the PJ Orlando types, just getting a different type of hitter in there, a guy that's going to be, up quicker than those guys, potentially even next year or in 2027. And so yeah, I like this pick a lot for Miami. I think it was a good selection by them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's a 6'5" shortstop. He gets the Carlos Correa comps because of the body. It's so like he just damages fastballs. Like, you look at what Arquette did against like good fastballs, 94 plus, and the numbers are tremendous this year. I mean, he hit 19 home runs. He slashed 354, 461, 654 at Oregon State this season. Travis Bazzana talked about Arquette and just raved about him. And obviously, Arquette joining Oregon State this year, they weren't teammates because Arquette was at Washington last year. But, to listen to Bazzana talk about Arquette, like just raved about him. So, here's my question. Arquette's contact rate on breaking balls was 65% this year in college. So while we are looking at, a great combo of skills, mashes, fastballs, the overall contact rate was good at 79%, chase rate of 23%. So a pretty good approach. The power is quite good as well. So you look at a 108 mile an hour, ninth percentile exit velocity. That was upper tier of the college bats and a 60% hard hit rate. So yes, those numbers are going to naturally come down with wood. You expect that, but Arquette has the power. He's got the contact overall, and he's got a really strong chance to stick at shortstop. So I think those combo of skills is really, really great for his potential in a great pro career moving forward. So, I think that they got the guy, the best available. So I can't argue against what they just did, even though you may look and say like, oh, there might be some upside from a prep guy, Billy Carlson, etc. There's Jamie Arnold still on the board. Like, I really like what they did with Arquette.
Yeah, yeah. So do I. Like I mentioned, just getting that collegiate bat in there, that middle of the order presence, and we'll see. There's still plenty of time to clean up the issues against breaking balls, and and maybe if that kind of limits him long term, maybe he's more of like a 250, 260 hitter as opposed to maybe a 270, 280 guy. But even with that kind of lower end 250, 260 outcome, the potential for 30 plus home runs is there, and slot right in the middle of that lineup. Big run producer potentially. Love the frame. Obviously, some of the best power in this entire draft class. So yeah, it's hard to maybe you don't love the pick, but it's hard to hate this pick for
I
sure.
like it a lot. I think it makes
Yeah.
complete sense. The picks in for the Jays, there's a question of where do you think Billy Carlson goes? It wouldn't be shocking, honestly, to like see him go over the next three picks. I think that's probably likely. I was told the Jays would pick Jamie Arnold if he was available. Let's see if they do it. So he is here. It picks in for the Blue Jays. And they get a prep shortstop. JoJo Parker. The pick is in for the Toronto Blue Jays. I love JoJo. I know you do too, Eric. I think that JoJo Parker has potentially, of the prep class, the best hit power combo. You look at the body, if you're watching the stream and you see like a strong frame, he's a good athlete, really good mover for JoJo Parker. And like he looks like he wouldn't run well. He's posted some really good run times.
Yeah.
So Parker for me was the fifth best player on the board. And here he goes at 8. I thought the Marlins would go with Parker, but given Arquette's availability, makes sense. JoJo Parker does damage in the box. So pick grade, for me, I'm going to give this a B plus for the Blue Jays. I think the upside's there, the athleticism's there, the power's there. So B plus for me with JoJo Parker. Really like the spot for him. I think that the Jays ultimately needed this kind of bat injected into their farm system that's done really good with pitch development this year. A lot of their prospects taken a step forward. So B plus for me, like Parker. Eric, what you got?
I'm gonna go A. I love JoJo Parker. He's a guy I settled on as my favorite guy in this draft class. Like you mentioned, like out of all the prep shortstops, like you mentioned the blend of hit and power might be the best here. Like could be looking at above average, hit tool guy, potentially plus power. I mean, I think he's already above average power right now. With some projection left on the frame, and he moves well as well. Like this, a guy that similarly to a lot of the other prep guys we've talked about. Like there's not one huge carrying tool here with JoJo Parker, but he is just really good across the board. He's a solid defender, not a standout, but I do think he could stick at shortstop. Maybe he moves off, maybe he moves over to second base. We'll see. I do think he has the range and the arm to stick at shortstop if that's what Toronto wants to do. I mean, we'll see what they do with Bo Bichette long term, but could be an offensive standout at either middle infield position. Guy that can hit for average, hit for power, steal some bags, just do a lot of things well on the field on both sides of the ball. So yeah, I like this pick a lot. Again, Parker's my guy this year. Not a lot of separation between him and Willits and Holliday. I think they're all kind of in that similar tier. You could throw Carlson in that tier as well if you want to, but Parker's the guy I like the most out of that. All the prep shortstops, and I think this is a good landing spot here in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, this brings up an interesting spot for our next few picks as we look across the board. I mean, the Reds up next, and they've got a long track record of drafting collegiate arms. Obviously, Jamie Arnold has fallen this point. I had heard this was a rumor that he could go as far down the board as 10. So we're now sitting here, and now here we are. There's also some other guys on the board that you could potentially look at and say, which way do they go? They've been linked to Ike Irish for a while. Jamie Arnold sits there. Billy Carlson sits there as well. So this is a fascinating spot on where they end up going. There's a comment in the chat about the Reds having too many shortstops. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think that Ike Irish, he could catch. He probably moves to a corner outfield spot. If he does not, but the bat's legit, so it could play. I mean, Jamie Arnold, at this point, my top-ranked player left. But I think the upside play could be a Billy Carlson. Ike Irish, you could argue, from an underlying data standpoint, was the best hitter in the collegiate the class, just looking at a combo of like contact, chase rates, and exit velocities. That would have arguably gone to Irish. So very good stuff there. And the Reds are on the clock, so they've got some interesting ways they could go here. Any thoughts, Eric, on who they might take?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking one of the, either Arnold or Ike Irish. They've been linked to Ike Irish a lot, who I also love. I think he's one of the best pure bats in the class, and one that's, yeah, I do also agree that probably doesn't play catcher long term. He played more so in the outfield than catcher this year. So I'll go with either Arnold or Irish here, but wouldn't totally shock me to see him grab one of those. Whether it be Carlson or whoever else here, one of the prep shortstops. But we'll see.
Yeah, and this is, I think, where it gets kind of interesting. Arnold obviously still on the board, but you get into some tiers of guys. Like you've got a Kyson Witherspoon who could go a couple ways. Like, does he go here? Does he fall down the board? That would be interesting. Obviously, Oklahoma right-handed arm. Billy Carlson, like if he doesn't go here, then where does he end up in the draft? So you look at those and yeah. So we did get a question we want to answer now. What's the deal with the Red Sox? Another shortstop are going pitching. So my intel from the Red Sox, who pretty well sourced in, the Red Sox, I've heard one of the Gavin Keelin from Tennessee, or Gavin Fiend, the prep third baseman with it. So yeah, I think a couple. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But one of the Gavins most likely.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely heard a lot of Gavin Fiend as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if they went, any of the, collegiate arms were to fall to them at pick 15. I think that would be really tempting because they're starting to, as we've seen, the Red Sox are red hot right now, getting in to that contention window that they've been talking about for the last several years. Now that, all the big prospects are up with Anthony Meyer, Campbell, who's back down in AAA. But that window is now for Boston. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them go collegiate arm if any of them were to fall. Like if Witherspoon were to fall there, or if Gage Wood is still there. But yeah, I've heard a lot of Gavin Fiend as well, so that would be a good pick for them too.
All right, so we do have our pick in for the Cincinnati Reds, and yeah, we've gone a little off the rails here, but not too shocking. It's Steele Hall, shortstop out of Alabama, another one who younger for the draft class, reclassified. I like Steele Hall a lot. This is not overly surprising. He's down my board a little more, but the Reds, I don't know. I figure if they go shortstop, they go a different direction. But here we are again. One of the younger players in the class won't turn 18 until after the draft. He's a little on the smaller side, listed 5'11". I think that he's a great athlete, though. Runs really well. Could stick it shortstop long term. Good actions, good arm. For me, though, I'm going to give it a B, just given who is available. I like the pick. Don't love it given the other available guys. But this could come down to, again, what do the Reds do with the money? I figure this to be an underslot deal where they could potentially get some guys later down the board.
Yeah, I like Steelhall. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a phenomenal athlete. He's one of the better runners in the class. Definitely, a good fielder as well. Could stick at shortstop, but Reds kind of have a guy at shortstop with Ellie De La Cruz. So yeah, I wasn't really imagining them going the prep shortstop route. I don't hate the pick. I'll go B- here with Steelhall. Again, I think again, you mentioned he's one of the younger guys in the draft and one of the more premium athletes in the draft as well. And he was committed to Tennessee. Really, really fun player. And if down the road, him and Ellie hitting back to back and getting on the bases, together, that'd be absolute nightmare for opposing pitchers and catchers. So that'll be fun to see if that comes to fruition down the road. So yeah, I think a solid pick here, but yeah, I'm with you, Chris. A little surprising as well.
Yeah, so this opens up the board a lot. It's going to be interesting to see. The White Sox obviously have a ton of pitching in their system and a ton of left-handed arms. Jamie Arnold still remains. So where do they go? This will be interesting to see. I could see them going several ways. I've heard them linked to Case and Cunningham. So I know that was a question in the chat, like where does Case and Cunningham go? And I've heard him tied with the White Sox. So maybe it's not crazy to say that Case and Cunningham is the pick here, but I could see them going several different ways here. Man, how far does Jamie Arnold fall though if he's not the pick here at 10, Eric? I'll be curious your thoughts on this pick and where does Arnold land if it's not here?
I mean, selfishly, as a Red Sox fan, I'd love for him to fall to 15, but I know that's probably not terribly likely. But the White Sox are the team that kind of in this top half of the first round that I just don't have a great kind of feel for who they could go with. I mean, as you mentioned, they love their lefties. They love that low slots, lefties with the big breaking balls, and they've gone that route several times. So Jamie Arnold would not surprise me in the slightest here. But if it's not him, I'm honestly not sure. The White Sox again are the one team I've had a hard time figuring out where they're going to go in this draft if it's not Jimmy Arnold. But now that he's kind of fallen to them, didn't really expect him to be here at 10. Maybe he's their mold, and maybe he's just too enticing for them to pass up.
It's been an interesting 9 picks so far, and far from consensus of what we thought
Yep.
be. The White Sox could use a lot. Their system's good. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not sure. I think they go pitcher. Logically, that's Jamie Arnold. But do they shoot for the upside play of Kyson Witherspoon? We've seen that route be taken a lot with a Noah Schultz, with a Hagen Smith, taking a Grant Taylor. So this is a fascinating spot for them because Arnold isn't those guys. He's much more of a high floor mid rotation type arm with the funky slot, funky release. So now that a Kyson Witherspoon sits on the board, could that be a route they look to take? And could Gage Wood be in play? We'll see. They're about to make their pick here as Rob Manfred comes out. The 10th overall pick. Let's see. The selection is coming in right now. All right.
Ooh.
The pick is in. We have Billy Carlson, shortstop, Corona High School. And, I think this pick makes sense given all the traits that a Billy Carlson has and brings to the table. I think with what you've seen the White Sox do and how they've built out this system, this pick really makes sense to me. I think this could be your shortstop of the future. He's a 70 shortstop with a big arm. And I know you've got Colson Montgomery. I think he's likely to play third base long term. I know you look and they've got a Chase Maidroth there. He's going to play second base. And so this is your shortstop of the future in Billy Carlson. I like the play a lot here. I know Carlson was a two-way in high school. He's a shortstop through and through. He's not going to pitch in pro ball, but this grade gets a B+ for me given the fit. I think that this is what the White Sox needed injected into their system. So to get a shortstop that's a lock to stick at shortstop, that could be a gold glove there, and also have a pretty good bat, B+ for me here for the White Sox.
Yeah, I'll go B here. I was kind of teetering B and B plus, but yeah, I think this is just it might not be like the sexiest pick. It might not get the most oohs and ahs, but it's a real good like baseball pick. Like I think this says a lot about, Montgomery, him moving over to third base long term, kind of solidifying that infield, which could be a pretty good infield, down the road with guys they've either drafted over the last couple of years or brought in that like they did with Mydroth from the Red Sox last offseason. So yeah, I think this is just a good real world baseball move. Again, not the flashiest. He's not the huge bats or anything like that. More so. I mean, I think the bat is solid enough. He won't be like an all-star on that side of the ball, but given what he could bring defensively, the arm, it's an absolute cannon. This guy could win, a Gold Glove award or more than one Gold Glove award. I mean, so far away, and he's still a few years away from even, showing that on the major league stage. But just the glove is so elite right now. The arm is elite, and you could throw double plus grades on both, his field and his arm, and I would not fight that, and I would 100% agree with it. So even if he's just adequate with the bat, I think that all-around package, once you factor in the defense that he brings to the table and up the middle defense, which is so valuable to major league teams, I think this is just a real good real-world baseball move here for the White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at somebody that was up to 97 on the mound. So an absolute cannon of an arm over there at shortstop. The swing's pretty simple. There's some projection in the frame. He uses a simple toe tap. He stays into his backside really well. And it's a really high contact, good approach type. So when you look at Carlson, he ran a sub 10% chase rate on the showcase circuit last summer against the best high school arms in the nation. Pretty good approach there. The swing can be a bit long when in my looks, but numbers against velocity have been solid. The numbers against breaking balls have been good. He runs well. He does a lot of things well. So you got to like Billy Carlson here for all the things he does. He is one of the older prep players in the class. He turns 19 just a few weeks after the draft. So that affects some teams' models, but obviously the White Sox, I think, get a great play here to inject in their system. We've got the Athletics on the clock here. This is an interesting one because I think we've long seen the Athletics go the model of best player available. So naturally, that seems like we're looking at Jamie Arnold here. I think 100%. This could make sense for this team. Also, yes, they have some pitching prospects. We've seen Gage Jump take a big step this forward. They also have the hitters, like we've seen Nick Kurtz obviously come up and look dominant. We've seen Jacob Wilson, who looks like the Rookie of the Year frontrunner in the American League. They've got some arms. They've got Gage Jump, as you'll see on the screen. They've got Luis Morales, who's looked really good. But I do think this Jamie Arnold here, this spot makes sense for them. So we'll see if that's the route they go. But to me, like that would be my play here if I were the Athletics.
100%. Like it should be Jamie Arnold. You mentioned they have some good guys in the system, but I think they need to add more on that pitching side because as we've seen the lineup is pretty fun right now, especially with the additions of Kurtz this year, with Jacob Wilson. Denzel Clark out in center field has been really fun, and even if he's been up and down at the plate, but that rotation has been pretty bad overall, and the reason why they're one of the few teams that have already kind of fallen out of contention this year in the American League. So, even if, Jump and some others, Morales become good arms, I think it would be wise for them to add another arm here with Jamie Arnold. So let's see if that's a pick, and looks like it is.
The pick is in. It's Jamie Arnold. This makes all the sense in the world for the Athletics. I mean, You look at Arnold, it's so unique. Like if you're watching the draft stream and you're seeing the video of him right now, that arm slot is incredibly funky. And Arnold can manipulate baseball in ways that few can. Obviously, left-handed pitching prospect, Florida State. He's 6'1", 192, probably the most unique pitcher that we've seen in some time, probably since Cooper Jerpy years ago. 119 strikeouts this year in 84 innings, funky release height. Arnold, he still has questions like, can he make this work? Just the uniqueness. We've seen few pitchers actually have success here in the slot, but I do really think that a Jamie Arnold can make it work in pro ball. I think that the Athletics have actually developed pitchers fairly well. You look at some of the guys they've developed. I know people wouldn't say that, but I do believe the Athletics have taken a huge step forward in pitch depth. So for me, you're sitting at pick 11. You've got my number 6 player on the board. So for me, that's an A- here. Arnold, it's funky. It's not the most dominant stuff, but A- for me for Jamie Arnold here at 11. Eric, what say you?
I'm gonna go A. I love Jimmy Arnold. I think he, could wind up being, one of the best arms from this class, and he doesn't quite have the super elite upside, but this is a guy that could definitely be like a top half of the rotation guy. Very polished arm. Doesn't walk too many hitters. Like you mentioned, he has good feel for change up, good feel for a sweeper, which is a really good bat missing offering, and just that arm slot just is how it comes out, especially against lefties, but really against lefties and righties. It's just really hard to pick up. It's very deceptive delivery. I mean, lefties, it's an absolute. I can't even imagine being a left-handed hitter trying to just kind of pick up Jimmy Arnold from the left side, especially if he's going to be, 2 strike count going with that sweeper that is just going to dart out of the zone away from you. So, yeah, I was hoping they'd go an arm here. They really needed another good arm in the system, as I mentioned earlier. So I give this a solid A. I love Jimmy Arnold. I think I have him as my 6th or 7th best guy in this draft class. Him falling here to the Athletics at pick 11, I think is also really good value and just the best player on the board, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is the trend we've seen year over year for the Athletics. Best player available. Made total sense. I mean, let's talk about the unique look of Jamie Arnold. It's a 4'7" release height. He gets 7 feet of extension. These traits are not common. You can just see it on film to get that much extension plus that release height. It's fascinating. I think some people's question in the top 10, at least what I was told, was that they were concerned the fact that like Jamie Arnold leads with a sweeper. So when a pitcher leads with a secondary pitch, some teams don't love that. I think you can make the fastball work. It did tick up to 93 this year. It's from the release height. I think it's solid IVB. It's like 13 inches, 12, 13 inches of IVB, which if you hear the raw number, you're like, it's not good. But from a 4'7" release height, it's actually pretty good. And the vertical approach angle is like one of the best in the game. So sweeper, changeup, both play well. He uses that kick changeup grip. Rangers have their pick coming in. Let's see who they take here. All right, the pick is in. And the Texas Rangers select Gavin Fiend, third baseman, Great Oaks High School, California. I love this guy. I love Gavin Fiend. I may be in the minority, but I had him ranked 4th in this draft class. It's just everything you want to see. And yeah, I mean, this is a great play for me. So I'm giving it an A-. There are some risks, but I love the upside. So A- is the grade for me for the Rangers taking Gavin Fiend here.
I'm gonna go B plus. I like Fiend a lot as well. Obviously, he's one of the guys that I thought could fall to Boston at pick 15. One of the best, just one of the better bats in this class. Not a great runner. Questions on if he even sticks at third. Does he have to move over to be like a first base type long term? We shall see. Definitely has the arm for third, but we'll just see if he can stick over there or is forced to move over to first long term. But the bat, regardless if it's third, first, corner, outfield, wherever, he ends up slotting down the road. The bat is legit. It's one of the better power bats in the class, regardless of prep or collegiate, and a good field to hit too. He's not the second one of those all or nothing bats that have some hit tool concerns. It's a solid field to hit as well. So if everything clicks, this could be a guy that kind of slots into the middle of an order down the road and in a good lineup. Probably with Texas, they have some good young bats there and a good ballpark. This could be a really fun offensive talent if everything clicks. So yeah, I think this is a really good pick for Texas.
Yeah, last summer on the showcase circuit, Fiend was the best hitter. He did everything extremely well. We're talking like exit velocities up to 111 miles an hour with a wood bat. Very impressive from a high school player. He checks the boxes you want to see, like from athleticism. He's 6'3". He's 200 pounds. I think he sticks at third. The actions are really good. The athleticism's good. The arm is really good for Gavin Fiend. It's broad shoulders. You see him kind of barrel tip in the load and have a big leg kick, but that strong upper half, just explosiveness through the zone. It's natural loft in the swing. as well. It's I love Fiend as a hitter. It's a line drive oriented approach that gets to enough fly balls to hit them out of the park. It's a patient approach. He does damage on pitches in the zone. Very low zone miss rate for Gavin Fiend. I think the biggest question mark is Fiend's ability to handle breaking balls. Now we'll see that pretty quickly as he enters pro ball, as he sees much better breaking balls. It's he did in high school, but speed standpoint, he's not going to run. He's an average runner. It could tick down if he fills out that frame more, but I love the pick. I think he could be a really natural third baseman. I think some scouts that I've talked to have said, if you love Ethan Holliday, why do you not love Gavin Fiend? So yeah, I think that there could be some comparisons of like kind of who they are, while Fiend may be a little better athlete. So it'll be fun to watch, see how this plays out. But I'm a big fan of what Gavin Fiend brings to the table, and I really love the pick for the Texas Rangers. So now we get interesting. The Giants are on the clock. I've heard them connected to several guys. Vahiva Aloy is someone that I've heard in that spot. Yeah, I've heard Gage Wood there. I've heard Kyson Witherspoon. So there's some interesting storylines that follow as well. I mean, they just made the Rafael Devers trade. So obviously going from the Red Sox over there hasn't got off to the best start in San Francisco, but it makes sense. I mean, you look at the standings, you see a contending team. And I just talking to some Giants affiliates yesterday at the Futures game, they're going to be buyers again this deadline. They're going to continue to buy. They are going all in to win. I'm curious, obviously Bryce Eldridge is injured right now. We could see him this year, but there's some fun storylines coming out of the system. Yeah, it's a system that's gotten better. That's still not great. And I'm curious who they will go with here in the slot.
Yeah, they could really go a number of different directions here. Infielder, I think, is a need for them long term. So I could definitely see, Aloy here. Maybe even, maybe they go the other Gavin here, Gavin Keelin. We shall see. But, pitching, they've always been, pretty good at pitching development too. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went, one of the collegiate arms. And given that they are looking to contend now, and Buster Posey has really kind of made that known, like, all right, we're going in. We've had several years of kind of, not they've never been terrible, but not obviously where they were, back around 10 years ago when they won 3 World Series and was it 5 or 6 years. I think they're looking to get some pieces that are, kind of going to be competing for them pretty soon. So I do think it's for the collegiate route, whether it be infielder or pitcher, as opposed to someone that they got to wait 3, 4 years or more on. So yeah, they could really go a few different ways here, though.
They are on the clock and are making their selection now. The pick is in, and it's somebody I really thought was connected with the Red Sox. They may have sniped him here a couple picks ahead. That's Gavin Keelin of Tennessee Volunteers, shortstop, a model darling. This is a guy that model teams absolutely love for various reasons. The ceiling, you may argue that it's not the highest ceiling in the world from a collegiate bat, but I do like the pick here. I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, a guy you can push pretty quickly given his floor. He had a great season in the SEC against the best collegiate competition. So Gavin Keelin's the pick. I'm going to give it a solid B+. I like Keelin. I think that there was some upside route you could go, but they go the safer route here, which I can't argue against. Again, model teams really like Gavin Keelin, so B+ for me. Eric, what you got?
I'm gonna go B and kind of do so in the sense of how I was talking about the White Sox, where it might not be the sexiest pick, but it's a good real world baseball pick. I think they needed some help up, to shore up that middle infield. Obviously, they brought in Willie Adames, but adding a Gavin Keelan that could potentially play second base for them, in the somewhat near future too, maybe even next year. One of the more polished, collegiate bats we'll see in that discussion for one of the best pure hitters in this class as well. And you mentioned it. It's not super buzzy. Like, he doesn't have huge power. He won't be like a big home run guy. He won't be a big stolen base guy, though he can contribute a little bit in each of those areas, but not gonna be a guy that's gonna be popping 20 plus, probably not gonna be a guy that's stealing 20 plus, but he's a big guy that's probably a hit near the top of the order, can slot in, maybe in 1 or 2 slot, get on base, and let the bigger bats, you let the Devers of the world, let Bryce Eldridge once he's up, let the big boppers, kind of drive him in after he gets on base. So I think it's a real good, just real world baseball pick here for the Giants. Yeah, I'll give it a solid B.
Yeah, there was a question regarding Keelin if he played in a wood bat league. He played in the Cape Cod last summer, and the results were a smidge underwhelming. We don't want to put a lot of stock into it. There was a kind of lack of power. He hit 253 with a 333 OBP and a 341 slug. I think the max EV with wood last year was 101, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't high. But again, I believe that he took some steps forward with power. We saw the exit velocities jump this year from where he was last year at Louisville to this year at Tennessee. 15 homers, 32 extra base hits. He had a 110 max EV with metal and a 104 mile an hour ninth percentile. So those are good numbers. They're not like big power numbers by any means, but what you get with a Gavin Keelin is the approach. The chase rate was under 20% this year. He played both middle infield slots. He played short and he played second. The contact skills are plus 83% contact, 90% in zone contact. We saw the swing rate drop this year. He was much more selective at the pitches that he swung at. So, ultimately, you look at Gavin Keelin and you have to like the floor of this pick. And again, It's a tough spot to hit for power in Oracle, but it's a really solid pick. High floor, can move pretty quickly. So, yeah, this will be interesting. Now we've got the Rays on the clock. The Rays have been known to do a wide variety of things. They love their prep guys at the top. They could go an arm. I think there's been some arms that have kind of fallen into their lap, and we'll see where they go. So the Rays are, I think, that a pretty good spot with who they could take. So, Eric, any thoughts here on the Rays and which direction they should go and could go?
You know, the Rays are very unpredictable, but I kind of want to hit on something you mentioned there. I've been feeling prep from them, for basically the entirety of this year's draft season. They like to get the younger guy, kind of like Cleveland as well, similar kind of thought there with they like to get the younger guys that have the tools that they can get into their system and kind of mold with their kind of development mindsets. And they could go collegiate bat here. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think they're totally fine with just getting who they think is the best long-term talent available, whether that's a guy that could help in a year or two or more like 3-4 years on the road. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went prep shortstop here with this pick.
Yeah, they obviously have Carson Williams that's very close to ready at shortstop. And Williams is a gold glove shortstop. He's got power and speed. I know we've seen some inconsistencies with the hit tool there. I've seen Theo Gillen a ton this year with him being with Charleston. He's mostly playing all center field. So, he was a middle infielder, played some outfield in high school. Now he's fully a center fielder. So it's a good spot. I think that it's a great spot for the Rays to be because they do have a lot of options. Daniel Pierce is on the board. That makes sense for them. Steele Hall was somebody I was tracking that made sense for them. I know that they've also looked at guys like Brady Ebel, who probably would be a guy later they take, but they're coming up on the clock. Let's see who they take here. And the Rays selection is, in fact, Daniel Pierce. I thought this made complete sense for them. It's a, prototypical Rays pick where you have a really good prep shortstop here and has all the abilities in the world. He hasn't been like the flashiest of players, but he has really taken some steps forward this year. It's a really good athlete, and we know that the Rays love those guys. For me, when you look at it, like one of the best athletes in the class showing plus run times, he's shown some potential power and getting more into it as of recent. So I'm looking at it and I'm giving it a B. I don't want to go too high on this pick. I like Pierce. This makes sense, I think, all things considered, but I'll give it a B, just given that there were some other guys here that you could have gone with. So lots of shortstops. That's been the theme of this draft so far. And we had the most shortstops taken in the top 10 of any draft in history, and they're still rolling through. But Eric, your grade here for Daniel Pierce to the Rays.
Yeah, so I'll go with a B minus here. Again, I think this kind of fit them. Like we both kind of said that this fits their mold really well. A guy that's just a good athlete. There's some questions. Like I don't know if I'm like super high on the bat long term. Like I don't think he's gonna be a guy that really stands out offensively. Not that it's a bad bat by any means, but his value, in general into this Rays team is his athleticism, his speed. He could be, a good base stealer once he gets on base and just the defense at shortstop. We'll see how that kind of plays out long term. Obviously, Carson Williams, a phenomenal guy that I think you and I are both pretty high on in general. So yeah, Daniel Pierce I think is a good pick here, and just a guy that fits this Tampa Bay mold really well. Again, I think he's just the guy that they thought was the best player available right now, and without worrying about getting him up super soon. They don't need Daniel Pierce to be up this year, next year. So I think this was a good pick for them. And yeah, like you look at the board so far, we're 14 picks in. We've had 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9 shortstops and 5 pitchers so far. We'll see if maybe we go to maybe get some outfielders here or something like that. But yeah, a lot of shortstops here so far.
Absolutely. And yeah, the Red Sox are in a great spot. I think, I've heard Kyson Witherspoon they like a lot, and he has fallen to this point. You've still got Ike Irish on the board as well. The Red Sox theme the last several years is taken the fallen players who
Yep.
they like and didn't think they would get. And right now, like that's those two guys, Witherspoon and Irish. They were very hot on Gavin Keelin. That's the guy that they really wanted, didn't make it. So here we are, and I feel like the Red Sox take one of Witherspoon or Irish. You've got Merrick Houston sitting here, but that's not been their kind of play typically. So we've got one of the better farm systems in baseball. We've obviously seen them graduate several guys this year in Christian Campbell. They've got Anthony and they've got Marcelo Meyer in the majors. They're still trading too. I'll tell you this, that they are shopping everybody in the system right now outside of Peyton Tolley. I was just talking to someone at the Futures game yesterday who they have been shopping James Tips around, who they just acquired in the Devers deal. Like everybody's available in trade outside of Tolley, who they do want to keep. But if they move Tolley in the right deal, wouldn't be shocked. So the Red Sox are buyers, and we'll see who they go here. I think that you probably look at one of these guys, one of the fallen players in Witherspoon or Irish, and that is the way they go. So we shall see here in a moment. But Eric, any thoughts on the system or who they take?
Yeah, I would be really shocked if they didn't go arm. I love Ike Irish. I have him as one of my, I think, 6 or 7 best players in this draft class, and one of the best hitters in this draft class. But I think Witherspoon, maybe a Gage jump, but I think Witherspoon would be the pick here over a Gage jump. And I think just to add him, another impact arm into the system where maybe they get rid of one, like you mentioned, it's not going to be Peyton Tolley, but maybe they trade one of the other guys, maybe a Kennelly early or a Brennan Clark or whoever it may be, and just getting that upside arm back into the mix here. One of the comment they need LeBron James. Let's not do that, even though he is kind of part of that group now. But yeah, I think collegiate arm here again, given their fit here, their contention window. The fact that they still need to really upgrade this pitching staff. Hopefully they do start the deadline, like you mentioned. So yeah, I think Witherspoon or Jump would be the pick here, but probably I'll go Witherspoon. So let's see if that comes to fruition.
Yeah, there was somebody asking for a shout out in the chat. Malik Neighbors LSU just graduated. Congratulations. We'll give you a shout there as we wait for the pick to come in. My gut tells me it's Kyson Witherspoon. I know that it's certainly somebody they hoped, and that I heard that if fell, they would select. So Rob Manfred is walking to the stand right now, and the Red Sox are making their selection. The pick is in. And it is indeed Kyson Witherspoon, right-handed pitcher, Oklahoma Sooners. I think this makes all the sense in the world. Witherspoon is an arm with tremendous upside. He's listed 6'2", 205, and he's someone with an electric fastball. So the question surrounding Witherspoon, there's some risk that teams have had, given the consistency of the delivery, but it's hard to argue the results and the massive step forward he took this year. So I think given the needs and what Witherspoon brings to the table, it's a B plus for me because I've watched the Red Sox pitch development, and they have taken average guys and made them great. So they do great things. If you remember, Peyton Tolley averaged 91 last year in college. He sits 95 and a half now. I've read some of the comments, wasted pick, but remember, guys, the Red Sox are also looking to trade some of these guys, and who knows? They could shop a Kyson Witherspoon. You remember, they traded a Braden Montgomery before he debuted. Would not be shocking here where we look at a Kyson Witherspoon, and it's just a pick that made sense. So, Eric, your grade here for Witherspoon.
A. I definitely give it an A. I don't think it's a wasted pick at all. I mean, just look at the other directions they could have gone. Did you want them to go an outfielder? They're already pretty set there. They're pretty set in the infield. So really, it was the pitching route here. Unless they went with, if Gavin Fiend fell and they moved him, had to play third, that was another option for the hitting side. But didn't really see them going, middle infield or outfield route. And always, I'll take all the pitching we can get. We've seen, especially this year, the Red Sox, they've had a lot of injuries and haven't had that quality depth like some other teams have, like the Dodgers, for instance. So quality and good, talented pitching depth is always something that I think every team needs, especially a team like the Red Sox, who have kind of struggled in that regard lately, though it's gotten a lot better this year with some of these breakout arms they've been having, and especially Peyton Tolley leading the way. So, yeah, I love the pick. I think it's a great pick. This guy could have gone top 10. Falls to Boston at pick 15, a guy that could be up, within the next year and a half, 2 years or so to kind of fit into that contention window as well for Boston, who's looking to contend now. I love this pick a lot. I think it's definitely an A for me.
Yeah, so looking at Witherspoon, he's one of the younger college players. He's 20 years old, won't turn 21 till mid-August. Really good stuff this year. 2.65 ERA, 124 strikeouts to 23 walks across 95 innings. Fastball sits 96. It's really good ride, 19 inches of vert. It's a kind of a cut ride fastball. It's a tough look for hitters. Slider has depth and sweep. Plays well with his upper 80s cutter, and he throws a curve and change. It's a deep arsenal of pitches for Kyson Witherspoon. Change up around 90 with 15 inches of fade. So, yeah, it's a good pick. It's an upside pick for sure. And again, the Red Sox continue the trend of taking the fallen players in the draft. So we're on to the Minnesota Twins, who, again, they've gone a variety of ways, but recently the Twins have played the safer route here. So there's some interesting players on the board. They could shoot for upside. Ike Irish makes sense, but I also look and say, like, maybe it's a Merrick Houston type pick. So that'll be interesting to see where they go.
Yeah, Minnesota, they're another team that I didn't really have a good feel, and they can go a number of different ways. They don't really have a glaring kind of weakness that, they need to attack this area, kind of like I said with Boston and pitching. But I think Merrick Houston would make a lot of sense here. So I think that could be the pick here, just with all the injuries they've had in that infield. Obviously, Royce Lewis, hard time staying healthy. Carlos Correa, hard time staying healthy. He got hurt the other day again. So maybe they look just to shore up the future of that left side of the infield and go with Merrick Houston. I think that could be. I think that could be a really good pick here, though. They could go pitching here, but yeah, I think going shortstop, maybe Merrick Houston. I think that'd be a pretty good pick here for sure.
All right, the Twins selection is coming in, and we will see here in just a moment which way they go. All right, so the pick is in, and the Minnesota Twins have indeed gone high floor pick. Merrick Houston, shortstop from Wake Forest. This pick is pretty solid. You talk about the glove, and I think that's the highlight of Merrick Houston. A great shortstop. If you're watching the stream, you see the plays that he makes. It's an extremely high floor type player. The bat's solid. The hit tool is great. And he hit 15 homers this year. The exit velocities are the question. Now, we did see Merrick Houston hit a new max EV this year, but the power numbers under the hood are still a question mark. But again, Merrick can hit, he can get on base, and and he plays a tremendous shortstop. So you get a really good glove here where ultimately it could be a great pick for them. And you look at as a frame, like Merrick Houston has a frame that could continue to fill out and get more power. So he looks more like a power hitter when you look at the 6'3" frame that he brings to the table. So, the grade here, let's see, Merrick Houston, if we're looking in real life, I think you've got to give it a solid B because the glove's so good. Even if he doesn't hit for power, he's going to get on base. He's going to make contact. So for me, like I'm giving this Merrick Houston to the Minnesota Twins a B grade here.
Yeah, I'm actually I'll go B plus. So I think this is a spot they really needed. Maybe this can give them some flexibility to not have to rely on a very talented but also very questionable injury wise, durability wise left side of that infield with Correa and with Royce Lewis, who obviously as everyone knows none of those guys can stay healthy. It seems like so. Yeah, I think Houston. I think is a really good all around player. Yeah, so there's some questions on the power long term, but you can make an argument that every other grade outside of the power is above average or better. I mean, he's a good athlete, good runner, good defender, should be able to stick at shortstop long term. And so, yeah, not one of the flashier picks of the first 20 picks so far, but definitely one that I think is what Minnesota needed and something that they could have up pretty soon. And then they're still in their contention window. It's not going to going so great this year, but they could definitely make a move or two and get back in contention next year or year after. So a guy that could be up within the next couple of years. I think that's a good pick for them.
Yeah, I mean, and you look, they drafted Keelin Culpepper in the first last year, and he's been tremendous. He strikes me more as a potential second baseman. And obviously, Merrick Houston fits well as a shortstop for them. We're getting at an interesting spot here where the Cubs could go a lot of ways. I know they've been really in on a Gage Wood type who has fallen. Gage Wood was probably the biggest wild card in the first round of where he could go. But the Cubs do have plenty of options here. Ike Irish still on the board. You've got prep guys like a Kason Cunningham, a Brennan Summerhill from Arizona, who very high floor type bat. There's some interesting upside guys. You've got an Ethan Conrad who we're getting into the range where I heard he could go, where if another Wake Forest guy, we just talked about several Wake guys, if Ethan Conrad had played all season, he got hurt with a shoulder injury pretty early in the year. He would have been a top 10 pick just given the talent level. So lots of options here for the Cubs where I've heard them connected to a Conrad. I've heard them connected to a Vahiva Aloy. You've got to fall in Ike Irish. Where does he land at this point? And I've heard him connected to Gage Wood. So this is a very interesting spot for the Chicago Cubs, who I think are in a great spot. Sitting at 17, you've got to love some of these names still on the board. Yeah. And I'm curious what they do, Eric. Any feedback or thoughts there?
Yeah, I was just say I would love to be in this like 12 to 20 range right now because as we mentioned to open this stream that there's not like a ton of separation between guys that were going top 6 or 7 and guys that are going now. So just especially on the hitting side of things, I think you can definitely still get a lot of good bats here. I think you and I both are super high on Ethan Conrad, though they're already pretty set in the outfield, so we'll see if they go that route. I think if I was them, I'd look to go Gage Wood just to get another good pitcher into the system. But I would not hate Ethan Conrad here. I think that'd be a really fun, bat to get into Wrigley Field in the summertime there with the wind blowing out. There's a really good blend of skills there that I think could be a middle of the order bat down the road if you can stay healthy. So yeah, definitely a lot of good ways for the Cubs to go here. So we'll see what they do.
Yeah, and there was a question if we had any Merrick Houston Wood bat data. Yeah, he played a couple summers, and last year on the KP at 306 with a 465 OVP. No homers, but still really good stuff as the Cubs here make their selection, and we'll see who they take here. It is, in fact, Ethan Conrad. So we have Wake Forest again. Man, Wake Forest continues to churn out development. 3 straight Wake Forest Demon Deacons selected. I love this pick. I'll be honest with you. I'm a big fan of Ethan Conrad. Seeing some highlights. I got to see him there at Coastal in that series, and dude, he can swing it. I mean, Conrad is a new name because he was at Marist University last year, and that's like a no-name school, and he goes to Wake Forest, and has a huge year. I think the power's there. I think the athleticism is there. I think the hit tool is there. So for me, like as hard as it is to give a good grade like this, I'm giving it a solid A minus because I'm a big Ethan Conrad fan. I've got him ranked rather high. I've said it. I'll say it again. If he was healthy all year, he's a top 10 pick. You look at the numbers, 92% zone contact rate, exit velocities north of 110, speed. He looks like Chase DeLauder to me when you watch him.
Yep.
That's a great pick by the Cubs. So I give him an A minus. I think the Cubs did a tremendous job here.
Yeah, if you weren't going to mention the Chase the Ladder comp, then I was going to. So yeah, it's a really good blend. He's a big-bodied corner outfielder. Just a good blend. He can make good contact. The power's there. Good speed and athleticism. A guy that could really impact the game in a lot of ways, and a good arm as well. I mean, he could really be a five tool type of guy, but that hidden sixth tool that doesn't really show up in scouting reports, at least not as an official grade. He probably gets a 30 or 40 for durability right now. So, which is very similar to Chase Lauder. So, definitely, I love the pick. I don't know if I gave a grade yet. I'm giving an A. Love Ethan Conrad. I have him as one of the 5 or 6 best players in this draft class. Kind of an odd fit, like I mentioned there. They're pretty set in outfield. I thought they would have gone a different direction there, but I can't hate the pick. I love the all-around player with Ethan Conrad. So I think this is going to be a really fun player for the Cubs, especially if he can stay healthy long term.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks are about to make their pick. And at 18, they've been rumored with a lot of prep players. We still have Ike Irish on the board, but I've seen a lot of prep players rumored there. I know they like Slater DeBrun a lot. I know they like Case Cunningham a lot. I'm not sure if they've thought that Case Cunningham would fall. I've heard Case Cunningham as high as 10. So prep player here with Arizona makes sense. It's been kind of the way they've gone a lot. So we'll see. The pick is in. It's indeed Case Cunningham, one of the better hit tools in the draft. You watch Case Cunningham. If you're watching the film of him here, the body reminds me a lot of a Tamar Johnson type. You got that left-handed build where he's strong, but he's a really good field to hit. He's got some pop. I think he's got more pop than people have given him credit for. So it's a pretty big fall for Case Cunningham. And ultimately, like, I'm not sure. I say it's a big drop. I say that lightly because I heard the White Sox at 10, but this is probably the range that was more fair for him to go, especially like based on draft rankings and such. He's a smaller, but he's stronger. We'll see how it plays out, but this is the typical what we see of the Diamondbacks. I'm going to give it a B. Ultimately, I'm not sure where the power lies. He's pretty aggressive. He chases some. We've seen that chase on the showcase circuit. It's an all fields approach, though. Puts a lot of balls in play. The D-backs are going to do this, and they're going to do some creative things down the stretch. So I think when you look at the larger picture of the Diamondbacks draft, it makes sense. So it's a B for me.
Yeah, I'll give it a B as well. And I think not only does this fit Arizona's mold very well, Slade Caldwell, Jordan Lawler, Corbin Carroll, like the list goes on and on of just the prep guys that they've gone with over the last several years early in the draft. I think this is almost like an insurance policy. Like, hey, Jordan Lawler, obviously, I'm sure they're still very high on the talents there, but the guy has had a hard time really staying on the field. So, I think that was their, potential shortstop of the future at one point. Maybe that's not really the path anymore for him, but this gives them another guy that they could, if it doesn't work out with Lawler at shortstop long term, obviously they have Perdomo as well, who's obviously a very solid player, but I think this just gives them some more talent on that left side of the infield that they could potentially slot in there down the road. And yeah, we'll see where the power winds up for Case Cunningham, but solid fielder. Maybe he moves over to the second. Who knows? But I think he could stick at shortstop long term. But this is a really good bat. One of the better pure hitters in the draft class. Really good athlete as well. Probably gets on base at a good clip. Steals some bags. Maybe he's not more than a 12 to 15 home run bat. We shall see. How the frame fills out long term. But a really good ball player, a really good pure hitter, and I think this is a very good fit for the Diamondbacks here. So I'll give it a B as well.
If the Orioles are on the clock, they have the largest bonus pool of any team after making that trade. Their history, they don't take pitchers, they don't take prep players. They've taken 2 prep players in the top 10 rounds in the last 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. I had dug in on the research. They're going to go a college bat if I'm not mistaken. I think this makes all the sense in the world for an Ike
Ike
Irish
Irish.
who has
Yep.
fallen this far. I mean, I know they were certainly in on Jace Lavalette, but when you have Ike fall this far, it just makes too much sense for a team that loves taking the college bat. I'm confident they're not going pitcher. I can tell you that. I'm fairly confident they're not going prep anything. So I think the pick is going to be Ike here. We'll see, but this makes too much sense for me given Mike Elias' history since he's been the GM of the Orioles. We got a question.
Absolutely.
What was the grade of the Cubs? Both gave it an A. Love Ethan Conrad. I think he's very underrated. So, any thoughts on? You think it's going to be Ike here, Eric?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be Ike. Yeah, it makes too much sense not to be Ike Irish. I think this guy could have gone, as high as like the back end of the top 10. Now that he's fallen to the back end of the top 20, yeah, I think this is definitely a great landing spot for Ike Irish. Yeah, I definitely think it's him. But who knows? We've been surprised before. We shall see.
Here it comes. The pick is in. It is indeed Ike Irish, listed as a right fielder for Auburn. So that's kind of telling. I mean, that's the move probably to go to the corner outfield slot. So Ike Irish of Auburn. Ike had a tremendous 3-year career. One of the best 3-year careers of anybody we've seen. I mean, from his freshman year has been insanely dominant. So I love the pick. I've got to give it an A, just given that he fell. So it's an A for me for Ike Irish here. So Eric, your grade.
Yep, I'm going right there with an A as well. I mean, Ike Irish, especially now that he's, probably going to be, as they mentioned, he's going to be a right fielder, and didn't really think he's going to stick a catcher long term anyway. He really, fit better and projected better as a corner outfield type. This could be a potential middle of the order bat. I mean, there's a good blend of contact here, plus power bat as well, getting him into a good, hitter's park in Camden Yards. Definitely, I think was a great landing spot for Baltimore, and even though this year has not gone well for them whatsoever, and really was a total disappointment of a year so far for Baltimore, being in the cellar of the American League East. I think obviously there's still a lot of good young talent there, and if they can get some pitching back healthy, and maybe go out and get a guy, like this could be a team that could be back in contention very, very soon, as early as next year. So getting a guy that they could have slot into that lineup sooner rather than later, a good middle of the order type of bat. I think this was a great move getting Ike Irish. Love the pick.
Yeah, so I'll go into Irish. There's a couple of questions in the chat. Kate Anderson, great. I think we both gave that an A. They filled at 3. How do we feel about Alex Lodis? I love Lodis. I have Lodis like in my 30 range, so I think that it'll be fun to see where he lands. He may not go as high as I have him graded. So, and then the Astros targets. But Eric, how do you feel about Lodis?
Yeah, no, I think he's a good all-around player. I think he's a guy that could stick at shortstop long term. Definitely has the arm for it. Maybe he slides over to third base, but yeah, I don't think that's anything too overly imminent. But good power bat. Just a really strong guy in general. A guy that probably the two leading tools are probably his arm and his bat. Just, I mean, the strength of his bat, I should say. So yeah, I like Lillis a good amount too. I'm not like super crazy high on him, but I think he's one of the better collegiate shortstops in this year's draft for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So you look at the Astros and who they could pick. I think Jace Lavalette makes all the sense in the world. I think Vahiva Aloy. I've heard they like Gage Wood a lot. So there's options there for the Astros there. The Brewers are on the clock, and the Brewers, if there's something that we've seen the Brewers do, they love getting a good power bat. There's a couple people that could be here. I think that there's potential for Jace. I'm not sure they go that risky. I think that you could go Andrew Fischer, who I actually like above, Lavalette there. I think you look at the combo of skills. I do feel like that the Brewers are going to go college here. Brendan Summerhill's fallen, but I think that he lacks that power that they like in the draft. So I'll be kind of interested to see. We did get a Braves question. We will be wrapping up our stream here after pick 20, do some winners and losers, but the Braves will pick shortly after. If the Astros don't pick Gage Wood, I'd be shocked if the Braves don't take Wood there. So he's been somebody that they've been connected to and love for a while. So I think Wood is the Braves pick unless he goes to Houston, not far after. So we've got the Brewers pick coming up. You've got the Vahiva Aloys. You've got Jace Lavalette. You've got Andrew Fischer, who I like a lot. Even a Devin Taylor type. I think that you look at the Brewers' history, and they're so good at finding prep guys later in the draft that it would make sense, given their bonus pool and what they're working with right now, to potentially take a college bat that they could underslot a bit. So, for me, I think that's the college power bat is probably the route they're going to go and get a little bit underslot. So that's kind of where I'm leaning right now.
Yeah, same here. I think Andrew Fisher would be a great fit. I mean, they don't really have that long-term, option at first base. Maybe it's Luke Adams. Maybe Wilkinson's over there. They have some options, but I definitely think they're going collegiate bat here as well. And I like Fisher a lot too. I think he could be, potential 30 homer bat at the highest level. So that'd be a really good pick for them if they go that route.
Yeah, absolutely. So this feels like the play. The back end of the 20 to 30 range is going to be pretty interesting, I think, when we think about who could go where. And you certainly got some wild cards. The Padres, they're the biggest wild card where they go. You never know which way the Padres are going to go. And you've got some guys left on the board too, where it's going to be a fun finish to the first round and the comp round, especially. So I'm excited for the next few picks. Again, we will be tuning out or tuning off, logging off with you guys here shortly. The Brewers are making their pick. After pick 20, we'll do some winners and losers, and we'll recap the top 20. But here's the Brewers selection. The pick is in. All right, the pick is in. It's Andrew Fischer. He's first baseman, Tennessee. He's announced as a third baseman, which is interesting. Andrew Fisher's a first baseman, most likely. You look at the collegiate numbers, 341, 497 OBP, 1257 OPS, 25 home runs. So Fischer is the power bat that kind of fits this mold. And I think that it's going to play into the Brewers' hands where they're going to be able to ultimately get their prep guys later with the money. I figure Fischer to be a little bit under slot here at pick 20. But you look, they took a Tennessee first baseman last year in Blake Burke. This just made so much sense. It's a solid pick. I think this pick grade probably hinges on the rest of their draft and how it shakes. For me right now, it's a B minus. It's a solid power bat. You love it. It is a corner. He's a first baseman, so he's going to have a lot of pressure to hit. So for me, it's a B minus. I do love the power. I think that there are still questions in the profile, but I do like Fischer. I think that if they go out and they get some prep guys that they can ultimately underslot or overslot later, then we're looking at a better grade here for the larger picture of the draft.
Yeah, I'm gonna go B here just because I'm really high on the bat with Andrew Fisher, and it's kind of funny. I'm not one to usually make a lot of comps, but just the on base ability and the power that Fisher brings to the table kind of gives you a little bit of a Rhys Hoskins feel to it. A guy that can potentially pop 30 home runs, get on base at a super high clip. Obviously, Hoskins is their current first baseman, but who knows for how much longer after this year. So I like this pick a lot. I think they have a lot of good power bats in this system. I mentioned too with Luke Adams, with Brock Wilken. Obviously they do phenomenal work, in finding that international talent. Obviously, Jesus Made, Luis Pena becoming two of the better prospects in the game. So I like that they went kind of collegiate bat here, just given their ability to find, the younger upside toolsy talent in other ways. Whether it be later in the draft and or in the international market. So like them going, I thought they'd go either, this guy or maybe even pitcher here. So I like the Fisher pick a lot here. I think this could be a good middle of the order bat for them down the road.
All right, so that's the 20 picks. We're going to do some winners and losers, and we'll recap the 20 picks. I think the Astros and Braves picks are going to be interesting here. We'll see who they select. We'll probably still be on stream as they select. But winners, Eric, do you want to take the first winner here in the draft? Who do you think has been the biggest winner so far?
There's definitely several here, but I think the Athletics getting a guy like Jamie Arnold, I think was my biggest winner here. Again, they really needed some more impact arms in that system. The guy that could have gone top five, I think falling to them at pick 11 outside of the top 10. I like that a lot. I mean, I think I gave that pick an A just because, or even an A plus. I can't remember at this point, but I like Arnold. I think he could be not an ace for them, but a good top half of the order arm. And in fact, that they got him, at 11. I don't think many thought he would still be there at pick 11. So I like that a lot. Definitely an area of need for them. So that's my first winner there is the Athletics getting Jimmy Arnold at pick 11.
Yeah, my first winner is going to be Cade Anderson and the Mariners. Like the Mariners have to be ecstatic, and they were in a great spot. I mean, picking at three, they had plenty of options, but to get a Cade Anderson, I think that fits their system so well. I think ultimately that's a huge win for me was Cade Anderson at pick three. So the Seattle Mariners get a huge win there. See, Eric, you got another winner here.
Yeah, so stick on the pitching side here. I think the Pittsburgh Pirates getting potentially the best pitcher in the draft, the one that I think you and I both have him number one, guy that has the most upside of any pitcher in this draft. Getting Seth Hernandez at pick six, I think was really, really exciting for Pittsburgh. And again, I don't think they thought that he'd still be on the board. I think he kind of fell into their lap here. And yeah, they still have a lot of things to work on the hitting side of things, but just that potential, like I mentioned earlier when the pick happened, the potential to have that foursome in that rotation, a few years down the road with a Paul Skeens, with Jared Jones, with Bubba Chandler, and Seth Hernandez, that is extremely exciting and just scary to think about the upside that rotation would have. So I think getting him into that system is a good fit as well, given their player development org and some of their success stories on the pitching side over the last half decade or so. So I think that good fit, great talent. So yeah, I like Hernandez as a winner here going to Pittsburgh at six.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go a player as my last winner, and that's Eli Willits going 1-1. So big win for him in that top slot. I know it's not a team technically, but getting Eli Willits, first overall pick for him to make that jump. Yes, he's going to sign an underslot deal. We acknowledge that. But for him to be the first overall pick, reclassifying from last year or from next year's class to this year, 17 and a half, like big win for Eli Willits at 1-1. So, Eric, it may be hard to find a loser. We could argue no losers at all. But if there was one loser in the draft, who would be your loser pick, if any?
Yeah, it's really hard to find a clear cut loser, especially in the top 20 of the draft. And there wasn't any super crazy picks like we've seen in years past, though we were surprised at the beginning, which is where I'll go. I'll go Tyler Bremner going to the Angels. I just personally don't have a lot of confidence in the Angels to just kind of develop anybody super well. So I mean, I like the talent. I mentioned that when he got picked. I like Tyler Bremner in general. I just don't love the landing spot. I'm worried they're gonna push him too much as they have been known to do with other guys here recently. So again, hard to really pick a clear cut quote unquote loser so far, but didn't love the landing spot for Tyler Bremner. So I guess I'll go with him as my loser here.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue the Angels and Bremner both losers, and that if we want to go and look at it in that lens, where the Angels had all the options in the world, and they go Bremner. I know it's going to be probably a max under slot deal. They've got to give him 80% of the slot. We'll see what they do with the later picks. I think that'll be telling. But again, the Angels have not developed pitching outside of like a George Clausen, who's still had some struggles. And you look at a Caden Dano, you could argue maybe they developed him. So Bremner, I don't love it. Let's look at maybe if I can pull a loser here. I don't know. There's not a lot of losers, I think, outside of that. I struggle to really find one that I could argue beyond. I mean, you could probably say that Ike Irish as an individual was a loser, but it was good for the Orioles. I mean, Irish fell beyond the expected. So maybe Ike Irish himself is a loser, but I do think that he's still going to get a good bonus. And ultimately, he lands in a decent spot. I think you have to be like ecstatic as the Orioles to get him there. But maybe Irish himself ends up being a loser just from the standpoint of like there was talk of him as high as like 8 or 9 potentially and him falling to 19. Still not a bad drop. He's still going to get paid. He's landing in a good org. So, ultimately, like that's where I'll land. But I don't think there's any losers beyond that. We have seen the Houston Astros take in Xavier Nyans, the prep shortstop, third baseman, power hitter out of Mount Vernon in Washington. So that's an interesting pick there. Big power bat, a lot of risk with the hit tool. So he just went, and the Braves are about to pick as well. And the pick looks like it's in there for the Braves with actually pretty surprising pick. They go prep shortstop Tate Southseen with pick 22. So yeah, it's been interesting, but guys, thank you for hanging out with us. If you hung out the whole stream, we appreciate you. It's been a blast just covering the draft. Yeah, let's recap the top 20 and we will get out of here. I'll read through the first 10. I'll let Eric read through 11 through 20. But 1-1, Washington Nationals, Eli Willits, pick 2. We've got the Los Angeles Angels taking Tyler Bremner, right-handed pitcher, UC Santa Barbara. 3rd overall pick, left-handed pitcher, LSU, Cade Anderson of the Seattle Mariners. The most predictable pick in the draft, probably 4th overall, Colorado Rockies take Ethan Holliday, Stillwater, shortstop. 5th pick, we have the St. Louis Cardinals taking left-handed pitcher Liam Doyle out of Tennessee, who many thought would potentially go to the Angels. The Pittsburgh Pirates selected 6th, and they get a steal in Seth Hernandez, right-handed pitcher, Corona High School. 7, the Miami Marlins select Iva Arquette, shortstop, Oregon State. 8, JoJo Parker to the to the Toronto Blue Jays, did the Miami Marlins. Toronto Blue Jays, JoJo Parker, shortstop prospect. Number 9, Cincinnati Reds select Steele Hall, shortstop, reclassifier, 17 years old. And then at 10, the Chicago White Sox select Billy Carlson, the shortstop, out of Corona High School as well. 11 through 20, Eric, take it away.
All right. At 11, the Athletics, Jamie Arnold, lefty out of Florida State. Number 12, Texas Rangers got Gavin Fiend, shortstop, maybe third baseman, out of Great Oaks High School in California. Back-to-back Gavins, pick 13, Gavin Keelin, second base shortstop prospect from Tennessee University, going to the Giants. Pick 14, Tampa Bay Rays took Daniel Pierce, Mill Creek High School in Georgia, another prep shortstop. At pick 15, Boston Red Sox drafted Kyson Witherspoon, who fell a little bit, right-hander out of Oklahoma. Pick 16, Merrick Houston going to the Minnesota Twins out of Wake Forest. Good shortstop going there. Going back-to-back Wake Forest guys at pick 17 with Ethan Conrad, outfielder, going to the Chicago Cubs. Pick 18, Kason Cunningham, shortstop out of Lady Bird Johnson High School in Texas, going to the Arizona Diamondbacks. 19, the fall of Ike Irish finally stopped, going to the Baltimore Orioles, catcher, corner, outfield prospect out of University of Auburn. And our last pick from this stream, pick 20, Andrew Fischer, corner infield prospect out of the University of Tennessee, going to the Milwaukee Brewers. But yeah, thanks for everyone for hanging out. This was a really fun first 20 picks, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more excitement to come in the next few hours.
Absolutely. So it's going to be a fun rest of the draft. The Braves did take Tate Southseen. I had a question about the grade. I'll give it a C. I don't love Southseen, especially with Vahiva Aloy on the board. Like, they want a shortstop. Like, Aloy was going to play there. Southstein's 5'9", kind of stocky, strong. I don't know. Interesting pick. I wouldn't have personally gone there, but Braves do. We'll see what they do the rest of the draft. So, yeah, but that's going to do it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Bleacher Report draft stream. Hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday night.